Joining us live now is Maryland Senator Ben Cardin. Senator, thanks for being here. You have witnessed a lot of State of the Unions over the years. And our question to you is, what do you expect that might actually move the needle? Because so often the challenge for presidents is not only to give a good speech, to lay out accomplishments and hopes for the future, but actually convince an audience that they are the right person to continue to lead the country, and in this case, for potentially another 4 years. Is that something the president can do?
I think so. I think the president needs to remind Americans where we were 4 years ago, coming into COVID, where our economy was and how it's rebounded, the number of jobs that have been created, the small business growth, which are record numbers, bringing down the cost of prescription drugs, insulin costs, dealing with the cost of higher education with student debt relief. He's got to remind the Americans what we've been able to get done during his time as president, rebuilding America's infrastructure, but then have a vision for the future as to where we need to go to protect our democracy, the battle in Ukraine, to deal with the costs that American families are confronting.
Has he done enough of that, though? Has he done enough of that true convincing instead of, as you just laid out, a laundry list of things that have been accomplished? I mean, you have to do some real arm twisting, and it would seem from the outside that the president hasn't done either enough of it or effective enough amounts.
Well, messaging is always a challenge. You don't know what's going to get through, but I hope the president will be able to get through to the House Republicans to pass the supplemental appropriation bill, to explain that if you believe that there is a crisis at the border, as we believe, then let's act. Let's not just make it an election year issue. I think these are messages that will resonate with the American people. It's not only the American audience, we have the global audience.
That's right. The entire world will be watching this speech. Of course, there will be a lot of key moments, but what do you hope Americans focus on when they're watching this? We know there's a short attention span, but what do you want them to be focused on?
President Biden's leadership, how he has brought the global community together to preserve democratic states, how he's been responsible for the coalition to support Ukraine, how he's been a world leader in dealing with our climate crisis, and that he's been a leader here at home in rebuilding America, making us more competitive to meet our needs, the CHIPS and Science Bill to deal with the chip industry. All those are America's future. And we've seen his protection for union workers and wage growth. We saw that with the United Auto Workers. I think these are the messages that will resonate with the American people.
And I know tonight's not a campaign speech, but is it important for him to draw contrast between his leadership and former President Trump?
I think that's going to be obvious. I don't think he has to connect the dots. I think he points out where his vision, what he's been able to get accomplished, and then we'll remind the American people what happened under President Trump.
And can I get you for 15 last very quick seconds? The president also has to look at the naysayers and say, I'm still up to the job, I'm still intellectually sharp, I'm still young enough. Is that possible?
Oh, I think Joe Biden has demonstrated his capacity to deal with these issues. That'll be on display again tonight, and I expect it's going to come through very strongly on that point.
Congressman Beyer, thank you for being here. You've witnessed a few of these yourself by now, and you're familiar with the challenges a president has. For President Biden, they're stacking up. Even though inflation is down, economy's improving, there's still a large perception out there that maybe people aren't content enough to keep him in office another 4 years. If you're him, aside from listing off all of the accomplishments over the last few years, what do you do? What do you say tonight?
Well, I think he will list the accomplishments, but that's not enough. Elections are always about the future, and what the next 4 years going to be like. So I think that he has to, and I think he will, lay out a bold vision about how we promote American freedom, how we lift up democracy around the world, and especially how we do what he always says, lift America from the bottom up and the middle class out.
Northern Virginia, an area that has a lot of sway in elections. You are very much in touch with your district. What do they still need from this administration that they haven't been getting, but could over the next 6 to 9 months and make that difference?
You know, in my district especially, housing is the biggest challenge. We didn't have nearly enough homes. People are stuck in low interest mortgages that they can't get out of, and it's difficult to buy that first home. They often have to go way too far out. So I think he's going to address housing in a couple of important ways tonight.
How much of that is on you all as members of Congress to back him up as a party that sees this friction in the House? You get blocked a lot from Republicans. Sometimes the far right wing makes sure whatever you're pushing isn't going to get bought. How do you break through?
It's going to be difficult to break through this year. My biggest hope is that we will break through on Ukraine funding, funding for Gaza and Israel, for Taiwan. That's the biggest thing pending, as long as we pass the spending bills next week. I think a lot of this is going to have to happen when we take back the House in 2025.
That's optimism. Last thing, it's always the economy, isn't it? I mean, we quoted James Carville earlier. We know that. Even though those numbers are good, is there something else you as a member of Congress and the president in conjunction can do to make it even better before voters go to the ballot?
Yes, I think so. I mean, he's addressing all the junk fees that we have to pay. You know, the extra 10% here, 15% there. He's also addressing, I think tonight, the price of prescription drugs, which is a huge part of.
And he brought those down. The negotiations help, obviously.
Exactly, but he's going to do more.
Yeah.
We keep moving us in that direction. You know, it's about cost. You know, our incomes are going up, but so are our prices. So if he can hold on the costs, we'll be in better shape.
Yeah, and some of that tension still continues to go up as people struggle to pay bills. And we'll have to see how it goes. Northern Virginia, not immune to any of these problems, right?
No, not at all.
We want to bring in a longtime lawmaker of Northern Virginia, and of course here in Congress. That is Congressman Jerry Connely of Virginia. Congressman, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
We understand that there is a high bar set for the president tonight because he has not only to convince voters that he's been doing a great job, but that he also deserves another 4+ years from this moment on. You know the struggles of Northern Virginians, and you hear it from around the country. What is it that you believe the president can effectively do tonight? Not just list accomplishments, but truly convince people when there is such a skeptical audience out there.
Well, I think that he has a great story to tell. You got to tell it. If you say, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? The answer is unequivocally yes. Look at the economic data. Inflation went from 9% to below 3%. Consumer confidence at all-time highs. The stock market, all-time highs. Unemployment, the best in 60 years. You know, people are begging for workers, actually. Workers' wages, record highs.
So why isn't it resonating? Why is he falling short?
Well, because I don't think Democrats are really good at telling, the message and repeating. In today's world, with the multiplicity of news sources pummeling the listener, you've got to penetrate, you've got to repeat, rinse, and repeat.
It sounds like you're saying this is really an opportunity for the president to hit the reset button and tell those stories. How much do you think that this is an opportunity also for the president to, sorry, I'm getting feedback here, opportunity for the president to reshape this election?
I think it's early, and I think he has that opportunity. When we look at the contours of what we accomplished in his first 2 years with the Democratic Congress, it is historic. The 117th Congress is the most productive Congress, and it was sweeping, visionary legislation, all of which he was the author of. That's an incredible story to tell and to remind voters we're reshaping the future. We're reshaping the future to create jobs, to be more environmentally safe, to make sure your kids and grandkids are safe and have a democracy left to them. Joe Biden took over from a real historic low point in this country, and look at where he's taken us. I think it's an incredible story, and we don't want to go back, and that ought to be his message.
Lastly, Congressman, this is a place I think you would acknowledge that loves hyperbole, loves superlatives. Everything is the est of all time. How important is this moment for this president, for this administration on that scale of 1 to the most?
I hate the term inflection point, but I do think this is such a moment. We just finished the primary season, right? Early, but it's very clear who the two nominees are going to be. And so the election's beginning very early. You have a huge national audience tonight to reset, as you said, and to tell that story and shape the contours of the next few months. So I think it's a great opportunity. I hope he seizes it, and I think there's a real opportunity to open up the kind of lead, frankly, he deserves.
Yeah, this is a pretty late State of the Union address coming in March, so now that he knows who he will be facing a rematch, it can be a more clear-eyed speech tonight.
I think that's a really good point. I think the Republicans actually made a strategic error in doing that. So in not agreeing to do this in late January, early February, the timing couldn't be better for Joe Biden. So they've actually given him a platform at an opportune time, and I think he should seize on that.